Good morning, Chavarim. Today I am going to read to you Tehilli, chapter 105. And the reason that I'm going back to this chapter is because last week, when I was preparing for my last video, I came across in my search for videos to present to help put that video together and for the viewer to see where I get my revelations from so that they can have Abba give them similar melta from that progression of knowledge that he reveals. And it was very interesting because when I had made my very first video recording, it was on the word turn. And I had watched Alan's video that he did a study on the word turn so long ago that when I recorded that video that I made, I didn't even remember that Alan had ever done a study on that word. And Abba revealed to me that go back and watch your video and make the connection of your interpretation and Alan's interpretation. And they were very similar, and yet these two, remember how in my video of the modern Hebrew letter forms can be very similar? Well, I hadn't made that video yet upon my first time looking up the word turned, and I had confused these two when I first looked the word up. I thought hey was chet. You see how there's that little space on hey where it's not on chet? The first time I looked that word up, it didn't even register to me that there was that little space. And if you kind of pay attention to my theme in the thread of all of my videos, it really ties in and builds on what I had shared about my personal life in my very first video, about the division that goes on when we privately in prayer dedicate ourselves to Abba Father and tell him, that we want to open ourselves to his guidings and put his desires ahead of our own. In that dedicating process, Yahweh separates us from many people in our lives that we were close to that are detrimental to our walk with him after that dedication. So I talked a little bit about that, and of course, if you're following my videos, you'll see where that all builds to. So it's interesting that the first time that I looked that word up, I saw chet, which is about division. It's a fence in the Otiot. But it was really hey, the worshiping Ruach. So that right there was a big melta to me in and of itself. Seeing that, wow, this Ot letter form that I saw, it still is very similar when you line up the Otiot, and yet he was showing something to me personally. Yet the similarities, when you look at what the letter form really is with what he was showing me personally, it just kind of expounds. So if you rewatch the first 5 minutes of my part 2 on how do we study the Otiot, I kind of expound on what I'm saying right now, because something similar happened to me with Tet and Mem. You know, they kind of look like the same letter form but flipped in modern Hebrew. So if you're finding that this is happening to you, you know, if you're kind of new like I am at studying the Otiot and the Hebrew language, you know, I've only been studying it it's been a little less than 2 years now. And, you know, until I took that time to really compare and draw them out and get it in my mind when I made that part 1 and part 2 about how to differentiate modern Hebrew letter forms, you know, I'm finding that I was mixing up these letter forms kind of frequently. So if that's happening to you too, please, you know, watch that video a few times and, you know, maybe even draw them out yourself so that, you know, it happens less. Because, of course, we don't want to mix them up, and yet at the same time, if Abba causes that to happen or allows it to happen when we're doing our studies, then he's got a personal, very personal message for us. So that's where I wanted to start before we ask Abba for his presence and get into the really beautiful Tehilli psalm that King Dawid wrote. One other thing too, I don't know if I mentioned that video that Alan does the study on turn. It's pretty cool if you want to, you know, and you have the time, watch that video too. That's what the graphic looks like. It's called About Purified Speech. Okay. Our beloved Abba Father Yahweh, to thee, Abba, thank you so much, Father, for this time and for your Ruach HaKodesh filling this study and giving us the Miltah, the revelation that only you can provide, and showing each and every one of us something that we haven't yet seen in reviewing this Tehilli, this psalm, and for helping the Miltah to root deep in our hearts to where it flowers into your beautiful work manifesting in our day-to-day lives. Thank you so much for your protection from the Geder HaKodesh, so that any distractions that try to pull us away during this study are unable to have the result that Hashatan tries to trip us up with. We are so grateful also, Yeshua, for your sacrifice and for leading us each and every day, and Ruach for your presence to help us to live your fruit through the love that we all share when we are Echad, one. Okay, friends, let's dig in. And of course, I'm going to make interjections at certain points that I feel Elohim wanting me to share. So, Tehilli, chapter 105. Give thanks to Yahweh. Call upon his name. Make known his deeds among the peoples. Sing to him. Sing praise to him. Speak of all his wonders. Make your boast in his Kodesh name. Not just his title, because many mighty ones, small e Elohims there are, but we have one Yahweh that we want to reference when we praise. Remember not to forget his name just by what so many people do, calling him Lord, but all unknowingly for most, which of course he forgives. But if we know, go and watch that video that I made if you're still struggling with this. Many titles, one name. Let the hearts rejoice of those seeking Yahweh. Seek Yahweh and his strength. Seek his face always. Seek to be in his presence always. For him to not turn away from us because of things that are abominations to him, that are displeasing to him. He turns away when we hurt him. So we seek his face by pleasing him. Remember his wonders which he has done, his miracles and the right rulings of his mouth. O seed of Abraham, his servant, children of Yaakov, his chosen ones. He is Yahweh, our Elohim. His right rulings are in all the earth. He has remembered his covenant forever. The word he commanded for 1,000 generations. And remember, command is not quite the right English word, because command has kind of been drilled into us as if you don't do this, it's a punishment. No, his loving instruction, the word he lovingly instructs us with for 1,000 generations, that he made with Abraham, and his oath. Remember a word, oath, the Otiot. Our words are oaths. We have to be very careful what we say, because it's an oath. Abba Father's Otiot is his oaths to us. And his oath to Yitzhak, and established it to Yaakov for a law, for a loving instruction to guide us on the way. Remember that video that I made about how does Elohim guide us? Through his signs. Sign is interpreted as ot. Otiot, the Otiot, his word is his signs, is his loving instruction to us. If we want to know how to get through life, this is the way. Just remember, also in my video on how do we survive the last days, I had gotten specific about how when I'm going through a personal issue, I'll tell Abba, like, oh, what do I do? And he'll guide us to exactly where. It never fails. Every single time I ask him to talk to me about a certain whatever is going on in my life, it is so specific where he guides me as an answer. It blows my socks off. To Yisrael, an everlasting covenant, saying, to you I give the land of Canaan, the portion of your inheritance. For when they were few in number, few indeed, and sojourners in it. We're sojourners today, walking with Elohim. We just follow his lead. And they went about from one nation to another, from one reign to another people. He allowed no one to oppress them, and he reproved sovereigns for their sakes. Do not touch my anointed ones, and do my Nevi'im, my prophets, no evil. Remember too that it's like, this on a personal note, to me, I was like, wow, because I feel like I've been, constantly uprooted lately. I mean, I have moved 11 times in the past 5 years. And, with how fast paced life is today, that can be really stressful. And then to have constant job changes and, relationship changes, it's like, gosh, it's like, when is there peace? When is there settling? So having this as a reminder that his chosen ones, his Koreshim, his people, when it was just the Israelites, the Jews in the beginning, before Yeshua opened the door to the Gentiles as well by his sacrifice, here it is right here. They were constantly here, there, and everywhere, I mean, we're going to even look at Joseph, was slavery that he went through, and the betrayal by his own brothers, his own family, his mishpacha. Happens to us today too. So count it all joy, my fellow believers, when we go through trials. These trials are refining us, as we're going to see here in the following verses. And he called for a scarcity of food in the land. He cut off all the supply of bread. He sent ahead of them a man, Yosef, sold as a slave. They afflicted his feet with shackles. His neck was put in irons until the time that his word came. The word of Yahweh refined him. The word is capitalized. I love the Holy Scriptures for helping the understanding with their thorough research for that. The word of Yahweh, Yeshua, refined him. And if you go to Alan's study on Bereshit, Genesis, I would have never made this connection before. It's so insightful that Yosef is yet another precursor to Yeshua and what he went through. Yeshua was enslaved for those 3 days before his torturous sacrifice. So yet again, when we're going through all this heavy oppression and attacks that we go through as Kodeshim today, we're being refined, we're being taught, we're being made as gold. That's another video that's really good to go and watch. It's a playlist that I have with the businessman's shoes. I took it off air just for like a few weeks because when Abba revealed this to me when I was preparing for my previous video, I was like, oh, I referenced this video. But I can see now that he wanted, it's all tying together. Like, this is a reminder that he wants us to keep at the forefront of our minds another trip around the tree, that our sufferings today are not for naught. The sovereign sent and released him. The ruler of the people let him loose. He made him master of his house and ruler over all his possessions, to bind his chiefs at his pleasure and to teach his elders wisdom. Then Yisrael came to Mitzrayim, and Yaakov sojourned in the land of Ham, and he increased his people greatly and made them stronger than their enemies. Just like what he's doing today too. He turned their heart to hate his people, to conspire against his servants. Here's where my question was that the Otiot revealed. He, capital He, Yahweh, turned their heart, the enemy's hearts, to hate his people, the Yisraelites. So, if you rewatch my first video, I kind of got into this about like, well, wouldn't that seem like a disaster? But disaster is not a kosher word. So, what's going on here? Hapak. Well, Alan shared that it's hafach. I looked that up in this, so there must be another source, which I don't dig into this too much because time is so limited these days as well. This one doesn't show the F, that it's P or F, but on here, if you see pay, it says P or F. It does. So I have down there the Modern Hebrew from Strong's, the H 2015, Hebrew 2015. If you're really concerned about this, I'm sure you can figure out a website to learn a little bit deeper into the modern Hebrew letter forms and pronunciation. So hafach, I tend to trust what Alan says because he really digs. So as far as what the Ruach HaKodesh revealed to me in terms of why did Yahweh hafach the Israelites' enemies to hate them? Yahweh blew his Ruach HaKodesh to bend in order to reveal his work in the fifth dimension, the spiritual realm. We see the blowing twice because we have the breath and the blow right there. The revelation, the meltah, the filling of the ruach, beholding the fifth dimension, the spiritual realm. So Yahweh causes instances in our lives, in the people's around us lives, in the Ivrim's enemies' lives, to fall according to his plan, according to his will and his work. Again, that free will or predestination would probably come up into your mind at this point, thinking, okay, well then that means everything's already destined. Where is our free will? Watch that video from Alan again if this is something that kind of trips you up. If it's tripping you up, you need another trip around the tree. Alan Horvath, free will or predestination. Basically, the way that I simply understand it is that because he knows our hearts, he causes what is going on around the ones with the right heart condition to experience what will lead them to his praise. Just like Yeshua said, he will never let one of his sheep be lost. Yes, we might stray because we have some refining that we need to do, or we might have a really major issue befall us, and it is still a protection because of what's going on inside of us, as long as we're still holding his hand and allowing him to guide us and do his work in us that blossoms. Continuing to read this Tehilli also helps with this understanding. So I'll continue. And I'll reread that verse too. Verse 25. He turned their heart, he hafach their heart to hate his people, to conspire against his servants. He sent Moshe, his servant, Aharon, whom he had chosen. They put among them the matters of his signs and wonders in the land of Ham. He sent darkness and made it dark, and they did not rebel against his word. He turned their waters into blood and killed their fish. Their land teemed with frogs in the rooms of their sovereigns. Yahweh sure does have a sense of humor. He spoke, and swarms of flies came, gnats in all their borders. He gave them hail for rain, a flaming fire in their land. And he smote their vines and their fig trees, and broke the trees of their borders. He spoke, and locusts came, and larvae innumerable, and they devoured all their plants in their land. They devoured the fruit of their ground. Then he smote all the firstborn in their land, the first fruit of all their strength. Remember to give our first fruits to Yahweh every day, even if it's just a simple, "Good morning, Abba Father, Tutti for this day." He'll give us the strength we need to get through the day. This verse 37 is, by the way, that the businessman's shoes tied in a knot, the playlist. And brought them out with silver and gold. And among his tribes, no one faltered. That's the word I do the study on in that video. Mitzrayim was glad when they left, for the fear of them had befallen upon them. He spread a cloud for a covering, and fire to give light in the night. They asked, and he brought quail, and satisfied them with the bread of the Shamayim. He opened the rock, and water gushed out. It ran in the dry places, a river. For he remembered his Kodesh word to Avraham, his servant. So he brought out his people with joy, his chosen ones with singing. The picture that I have of the mountains with the birds on part 4 of that playlist of the How Do We Avoid Stumbling, that's what it's called, is the one that I talk a little more about this verse. Verse 43. And he gave to them the lands of the Gentiles, and they inherited the labor of peoples, in order that they might guard his laws and watch over his Torot. Hallelujah. Watch for Abba Father doing these sorts of things for you as you continue to put him first. The berachos, the blessings that he's given me lately, despite all of my hardships and all the changes, he is taking care of me. He's my Abba Father. And Hallei Yahweh, I praise Yahweh for that, and I praise Yahweh for everyone who is putting Abba Father first as well, and allowing Yahushua to guide them each and every day, and allowing the Ruach HaKodesh to not only fill their Beit, their temple, their Beit, their house, but everywhere they go, and thus both blessing the people around them. I hope and I pray that all these videos are a beracha, and if I don't intend to stop making videos, of course, because this is the most important thing we can do, is spend time with Abba and to show Yeshua how much we love him, you know, by feeding his sheep, the ones that come to feast at the tables, and just for the chedwa, the joy that of Abba Father that it not only fills me with, but I pray fills you with too. And the hope that it provides if someone is still in that in-between phase, the encouragement. I'm probably going to be back to working 6 days a week. So I think that's really cool too, that Abba put that urgency in me during that time, that he both the time that I had to really, you know, make these videos. I do have another subject that I really want to start digging into. And I know that it's going to take some time because I haven't found anybody specifically talking about it that I trust their style of teaching. But I know Abba will reveal to me the answer. So definitely when I come across that answer in Abba's time, I'm of course going to make another video. If Abba leads me to make more videos in between that, like some short ones, of course I will be happy to do that. This is his show, not mine. So, shalom, mishpacha.